By late 1971, the situation in Pakistan had become untenable. The Pakistanis had ignored the popular leader Sheikh Mujibur Rahman's overwhelming victory in the Pakistani National Assembly elections a year earlier, the acceptance of which would mean an end to the military junta's veto, the end of military rule.
This was a severe setback to communal and religious parties on whom the Pakistani military government had depended.
On the 1st of March, Yahya Khan, the Pakistani dictator, indefinitely postponed the National Assembly, what many in East Pakistan recognized as a supreme act of treachery. East Pakistan was plunged into a crisis. Riots broke out. The Sheikh's calls for a non-violent movement were being ignored. Lieutenant General Tikka Khan, the newly appointed martial law administrator, arrived in Dhaka to take on the patriotic fervor which was overrunning the East. Tikka Khan's response: "Give me enough force and I'll crush them in 48 hours. Tikka Khan went on to wipe out Dhaka University, a center for the spread of liberal and democratic ideology. Thousands of intellectuals were killed as the Pak army swept in to sweep out popular visions of independence. What resulted were mass rapes, murders, and systematic destruction. It also meant the birth of the Mukti Bahini, the Bangladesh Liberation Force, an indigenous force involved in the fight for the liberation of East Pakistan. The Mukti Bahini built up their strength in sanctuaries near the border, away from the eyes and influence of the Pak army. Several of the freedom fighters who were recruited were educated and were trained, armed, and given operational experience at these camps. At its peak, 2,000 Mukti Bahini guerrillas were being turned out for operational duties. But by early 1971, a cataclysmic deterioration of the conditions in East Pakistan meant the inflow of millions of refugees into India. People forced to leave their homes in the face of what some began to refer to as a genocide. The seeds of the 1971 Indo-Pak War had been laid. It was now just a matter of time. The armed forces, already in the midst of a substantial rearmament and expansion program following the 1962 and 1965 wars, were told to get ready. By October 1971, the first skirmishes began, with Pakistani soldiers attacking Mukti Bahini posts in Kamalpur along the border. In November, there were a number of airspace violations over Indian territory. And on the 21st of November, Pakistani forces supported by tanks launched an offensive against Boira on the border with West Bengal.
4 Pakistani tanks were destroyed and 9 captured. The Pakistanis suffered heavy casualties.
The Indian army counterattacked as the Prime Minister Indira Gandhi flew to a host of Western nations in a final effort to negotiate a settlement.
In November of 1971, herself made a trip to Belgium, Austria, the United Kingdom, the United States of America, France and West Germany. She appealed for justice for the Bengali people and relief for India from the strain of keeping the refugees. She said, "Our country is facing danger. I have come here in search of some wise impulse, which, as history tells us, sometimes works to save humanity from despair."
At 5:45 p.m. on the 3rd of December 1971, Pakistan launched preemptive airstrikes against a number of Indian airfields. The two subcontinental neighbors were now at war. This is the man who took India to war. General Sam Manekshaw, later India's first Field Marshal, had the ear of the Prime Minister. Never visibly tense, General Sam knew war was around the corner, and when it happened, he was ready.
Mrs. Gandhi was very good about that. She said, you are in charge, Sam, as long as you get me what I want. And so we did.
On the Eastern Front, East Pakistan was surrounded by three major Indian formations: the 2 Corps in West Bengal, the 33 Corps to the northwest. Under the 33 Corps was the 101 Communication Zone headquartered in Guwahati, and the 4 Corps in the Tripura sector. The initial 2 Corps thrusts were meant to liberate territory west of the Padma River, and the attacks convinced the Pakistanis of evacuating Jessore, once thought to be a stronghold. Over on the 33 Corps sector, the main thrust went in Hilli, the goal to cut the railway south of Rangpur before moving south for Bogra. Some of the strongest defences had been organized in Hilli, which saw some of the most fierce fighting during the war. The 101 Communication Zone area struck from Tura to Jamalpur, northwest of Mymensingh. The 4 Corps offensive in the Sylhet district was meant to liberate all territory in East Bangladesh, south of the Surma and east of the Meghna rivers. 4 Corps attacked in the direction of Sylhet and Maulvi Bazar. The goal in all this was to isolate what was known as the Dhaka Pole. Central to the Indian Army strategy was speed, its biggest achievement remaining one step ahead of the enemy through swift movements and bypassing tactics. Before the Pakistanis could hunker down for a real fight, the Indian armed forces were knocking at the gates of Dhaka. Despite the initial reverses, the Pakistani military leadership in East Pakistan remained defiant.
But a lot of men might die.
The price of freedom.
For what freedom? Not yours.
It's mine, yes, my country, Pakistan.
Do consider
Pakistan will stay, yes.